Statement from Coach.
Appreciate you guys coming out like always, covering Penn State football. Obviously, the weather has changed. Typically, I get into players of the week. We don't do that in this situation. I think the biggest thing that summarizes the game is we did fight extremely hard for 4 quarters, had a chance to win at the end, but we had turned the ball over 5 times all year, and we turned the ball over 3 times on the road against an undefeated team in the Big Ten on the road. Had as tough of a 4-game stretch as probably anybody in the country. Did not play well enough to win. Got to give Minnesota credit, but we did not play well enough to win. Getting into Indiana, last time Indiana found a way to get a win over Penn State was in 2013, right before we got here. We've had pretty competitive games with these guys. They've been pretty competitive with everybody. And obviously this year they're having a heck of a year. I think Coach Allen's done a great job. I really like Tom. He's got great energy. I think he's in it for the right reasons, cares about the kids, and is building that program the right way. So it's great to see him having the success he's having in year 3. Coming into the year, they had a good amount of returning starters, 20 returning starters. 21 returning starters, 9 on offense, 9 on defense, and then 2 specialists. You look at them on offense. Coach DeBoer has done a really good job. He's got a really interesting resume. As you guys know, I try to kind of have an understanding of who the coaching staff is, where they got them from, their background, but he's got a pretty extensive background. Has been very, very successful. Obviously they were able to hire him away from Fresno State. He's done a really good job. They're throwing the ball all over the field. They're a spread offense, running the ball probably less than what we have seen from Indiana over the last few years, but they're throwing it extremely well. Predominantly 11 personnel team, but they'll go 11, they'll go 12. They mix in empty, they go unbalanced. They do it all. Very impressed with offensive lineman number 68, Hunter Littlejohn. Stevie Scott is a kid from our region. He's a New York kid who's really played well. Played well last year for him. Is playing well right now. He's 6'2". He's 231 yards. Got over 700 yards rushing. But he's a nice complement to what they do offensively. And then they got a young man, Watt Filer, if I'm saying it right, number 1 wide receiver, who's having a really good year. I think coming into this year, he had like 57 career catches, and he's got 59 this year out of Tampa, and is making a bunch of plays. They got co-defensive coordinators in Mark Hagan and Kane Womack. I think Coach Womack is the one who calls the defense, but they do have co-defensive coordinators. They play hard. They're a 4-down defense. They do play a variation of robber coverage, which we don't see a whole lot. And then obviously mix in quarters and some man coverage as well with blitz behind it. It's interesting to look at their team and how their team is built. I know Coach Allen had spent some time obviously at South Florida, been a high school coach in Florida as well, but they're a heavy Florida. I think 8 out of 11 starters on defense are from Florida. Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi is a big part of their team and who they are. Their linebacker, Raekwon Jones, out of Florida, is a really good player. We've been impressed with him. Also, number 9, Marcelino Ball out of Roswell, Georgia. He changed numbers from last year, but he's playing extremely well. And then Tywan Mullen is a true freshman corner out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, who's playing really well. We've been impressed with him. Their special teams coordinator, William Inge. I've known William for a long time. He's been there now for 7 seasons. They're doing a good job on special teams. Again, wide receiver number 1, Philip Filer, shows up again, and so does wide receiver number 10, David Ellis. So it's going to be a really good opportunity. It's going to be a real challenge. They're coming in here playing with a lot of confidence, ranked in the top 25, so on and so forth. It's kind of how our schedule's been all year long. And I know our guys are looking forward to getting back into the stadium and play game. So open up the questions.
Rich Scarsella, Reading Eagle.
Rich? Rich?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
How are you?
Good, how are you, Rich?
I'm fine, thanks. You mentioned Saturday what you learned about yourself after your team's first loss each of the last years. Is there anything else you learned or your staff or players learned that might help everyone move forward after Saturday's loss?
Well, we had a bunch of discussions about it on Sunday and had a bunch of discussions about it on Monday as well, our day off. I think obviously the most important thing is finding the best way for your team to make the corrections, and that's all of us, coaches, players, everybody, make the corrections, not be defensive, grow from it, learn from it, and then put it to bed and move on. And we do those things on Sunday. We work very hard to try to do those things after wins. We work very hard to try to do those things after losses. And we're going to need to do that this week. So we approach it like we always do. I'm looking forward to seeing us out there on the practice field today, flying around and practicing hard. And one of the things I did mention, I think I might have mentioned to you guys, is that everything can be used as fuel. When you win, the confidence is used as fuel. When you have setbacks, that adversity can be used as fuel. So that's how we're approaching it and going to move forward. But I think, I talked to a bunch of the players as well, and I think they kind of feel the same way.
Derek Mars, Wilkes-Barre Times leader.
Hi, James. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. James, Saturday was the first time in a while you had a tough time in the red zone. After watching the tape, were there any common threads you saw there on the drive that didn't end in touchdowns, or what stood out to you there?
Yeah, we've been one of the better red zone teams in the country. We did not do that on Saturday. We had one play where we snapped it right when the clock was running out, where they probably could have penalized us. We had another one where I had to burn a timeout. We did not have a sense of urgency, with our operation like we normally do, and on the road that's always more challenging. Everything takes a few seconds longer, so I think that throws you off a little bit. But we did not do a good job of that all day long. They obviously had a plan to make sure that they were going to play some bracket coverage on KJ and Pat, which is smart. That's where the one penalty came from that they called the offensive pass interference, because they were playing a bracket coverage, a guy on the outside and a guy on the inside. But I thought they played hard, even when we attacked them on the outside, one-on-ones, their corners made plays. But we had some opportunities that we did not capitalize on. So we've been as good as anybody in the country all year long. Obviously, I don't think Saturday is representative of who we've been.
Mark Wogenrich, Allentown Morning Call.
Hi, James.
Hey, Mark.
How would you assess the contributions of the wide receivers beyond KJ and Jahan Dotson this season?
Yeah, we got to be more consistent. There's no doubt about it. We have to be more consistent. I think obviously Pat's done a really good job, and Bowers has done a good job, and I think our running backs have contributed more than years past. KJ's obviously making plays and was made some tough catches on Saturday. But we got to be more consistent at that last position. There's no doubt about it. But that gets spread around. I mean, we've also missed some throws. We threw some balls into the ground. We threw a post to open the game. That we got to lead the guy so he can run away with the corner on his back hip. It's that gets spread around. We got to find ways to get those guys involved in a little bit more early games as well. I think it's all of it. But at the end of the day, when the ball comes, you got to make the plays. And we have all of the faith and confidence that we can do it and that they can do it. We just got to bring it out even more.
Frank Bonanni, York Daily Record. Frank Bonanni, York Daily Record.
Hi, James. Good afternoon, James.
Hey, Frank.
Hi.
Your secondary, or your pass defense, I think is ranked 10th in the Big Ten. Is there something that's the biggest issue there? Is that surprising to you that maybe that's been more of a problem than you think?
Well, I
would have thought at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think when you tie that statement with Saturday, I get it. But I think you have to be careful with statistics sometimes, because when you're as good at stopping the run as we are, then obviously people are going to throw the ball more. So I think in general, we've been pretty good. This past Saturday, we didn't play our best football. So, I understand the point you're making, but when you tie that stat, which, it's like, give you a perfect example. If a lot of times the guy that leads the conference in tackles, and I'm not being specific about anybody, when you look at stats, I don't want anybody to misinterpret what I'm saying, but over my 24 years, a lot of times the guys that lead the conference in tackles, they're on a team where the defense is on the field the most. It's not necessarily, that they're the best linebacker or the best safety or in the league. So I just think you have to be careful with stats. There's no doubt they tell a story. I think overall we've been pretty good this year in pass defense, but we've also been really good in rush defense, which has forced people to pass more. I would not have thought going into that game that we would have rushed for more yards early in the game like that, and that they would have been as successful as they were throwing the ball. That was our game plan. Obviously, was to force them into throwing situations, and they did a very good job with it. There's no doubt about it.
Joe Giuliano, Philadelphia Inquirer.
Hi, Jay.
Hey, Joe.
What was the mood of the team when you met with them on Sunday, and are you concerned at all about anybody losing confidence over what happened on Saturday?
We're 8-1. We're one of the best teams in the country. Probably doesn't feel that way around here right now, but no, we dealt with it. We handled it. I mean, obviously, when you have success and you win, you're more confident, and when you have setbacks and you lose, it challenges that. But we got a resilient group of guys and a resilient coaching staff, and although we need the time to prepare, Saturday can't come soon enough.
Mike Gross, Lancaster Newspapers.
Hey, Mike.
I realize it's only Tuesday, but what have you seen, body language, things that guys have said, things guys have done that tells you that they've processed the loss and gotten right back to the 1-0 this week, saying that you always want?
Yeah, today will really tell me, where we're at. It's hard to determine that on Sunday in a walkthrough, and really what we do on Sundays. It's hard to really tell that. Mondays, we don't really see them much. They're on their own, and we're in the submarine watching tape and trying to put the game plan together. So today will give me a pretty good idea. We have practiced well all year long. I expect us to practice well today. And I would also anticipate that we probably have even a little bit more of a chip on our shoulder than we've had. But I do feel pretty strong. We've practiced well all year long.
Donnie Collins, Grand Times Tribune.
Donnie? Donnie?
All right.
Oh,
Donnie? Oh,
Donnie.
here.
okay. Hey, Donnie.
How you doing? When you went back and watched the film, what was your evaluation of Sean Clifford's overall performance?
Yeah, I thought he played a gutsy performance. I thought he played really hard. He made some big time plays. He, handled adversity. He missed some throws that he typically makes, both from a accuracy standpoint and also from a decision making standpoint. And he's been fantastic. I think he's probably, although probably people don't want to admit this, he's probably played better than anybody anticipated him coming into the year. I'm very proud of him. Very, very proud of him. You know, one of the things I did talk to him a little bit about is, you know, I think his greatest strength can also be his greatest weakness, and a lot of us, I think, are built like that. I know I am. He cares so much that he's got to funnel that energy the right way. I think sometimes he's maybe too amped up. Probably could use to take a deep breath and be a little bit more poised, but it's because he cares so much. He cares so much. It's very, very important to him. But I think if you watch the tape, he made some big time plays. He made some impressive plays, but he missed some. He knows that. I know that. I'm not stating anything. You know, I think one of the things that's I think difficult sometimes is you come in here and you know, I think a lot of times our press conferences are compared to maybe professional sports. This isn't professional sports, so you know, I'm just very careful in what I say, because I think we forget sometimes. Although my guys are 6'6", 290 pounds, they're still, you know, growing, maturing young men. So I just, you know, it's one thing to have conversations in private about things that we need to get better of and be critical. It's another thing to come out in a public setting and do it as well. But I couldn't be more proud of Sean. You know, I know after the game he took it very hard, but we'll be better because of this. I'm determined and believe that we'll be better because of this.
Corey Geiger, Altoona Mirror.
Hi, James. How are you?
Hey, Corey.
James, Michael Parsons did not start Saturday. First, is there any information you can share about why? And maybe even more importantly than the why, is what impact does it have on the overall team when one of your best players and team leaders gets himself into any kind of trouble for any reasons and has to be disciplined?
Yeah, obviously, when you're not playing starters, it has an impact. You know, we were down a starter for the entire game, and Micah didn't start the game, but played starter reps. But yeah, it definitely has an impact. Getting into why, once again, I'm not going to do that, as you guys know. I will say it was behavior modification. That's about as far as I'll get into it. But I also want you guys to understand, you know, Micah really has been good. He's doing really well in school. This is all new to him. It's a big change. The amount of structure, the expectations, the standards is different. And 99.9% of the times he's been good. But yeah, I think obviously whenever you don't have your best players in the game for any reason, it has an impact.
Well, if there's questions here in the room, raise your hand, we're going to make you.
Hey, James, how are you?
Hey,
You have a lot of very young players in leadership roles, and you know it's easy to be a leader when you win, but when you drop a game, it's much more difficult. I wonder how you think they reacted, whether it was in dealing with us, which could be very difficult, or from what the limited amount that you saw Sunday.
You know, I think Saturday night, again, it's hard to say that because it was just raw emotion in the locker room. Sunday, you know, sometimes I think they're more resilient than we are. You know, they seemed pretty good on Sunday, and I went around and had some individual conversations with guys, and I think you know we're handling it as well as you can under the circumstances. And again, I think today will be a really good idea. Give us a really good idea of where we're at. I think we're in a good place. You know, but again, I'll know better after today's practice. But I think what I saw in the locker room Saturday night is guys taking ownership, which was great. Everybody, you know, taking ownership of things that they could do better. So So I think that's a good place to start from, because the worst thing you can have is in a locker room of people blaming others. And I think, you know, when you're young, that's probably the natural thing to do from a defense mechanism standpoint, but I didn't see a whole lot of that. Our guys were good. So, again, I don't mean to keep saying this to you guys, but it's just hard to kind of give you some of these answers based on a Sunday, what our Sunday schedule is like, which we don't even see until Sunday evenings for a short period of time, and then Monday we don't see them at all. So I don't mean to keep giving you guys the answer, but that's the truth.
How you doing, James?
Good, how are you?
Good. So obviously after the first loss last year, you guys followed it up with another loss at home. So I guess what can you guys do as coaches to avoid another loss, and keep confidence up and stuff like that?
Yeah, and again, I'm going to answer your question, but it's kind of pretty much the storyline that everybody's been asking me. I've kind of answered that question about 12 different ways. You're probably the most direct with it, but it's about moving on. It's about, okay, here are the issues, here are the things that we got to get corrected. I do think the stretch that we were on played a factor in that. But we had to make the corrections, and we need to move on. Today will give us a pretty good idea where we're at with that.
Hey James, how you doing today?
Good, how are you doing?
Good. Michael Penix had been very accurate in the short area of the field when he was the starting quarterback. Since going down with injury, Peyton Ramsey has come in. Does he still have that same element in their offense, and how does it change between the two quarterbacks when you remove that sort of passing element from their offense?
Yeah, I think if I read this correctly, I actually think Ramsey is the nation's leader in completion percentage, career completion percentage, over 400 passes, I think, if I'm correct. So when you watch him, he's playing well and really has played well. I do think the Penix kid was taking it to a whole other level. I think he's got a chance to be special. But we've been very impressed with Ramsey. We've been very impressed with him. So he's doing a nice job. He's got good mobility. He's making big time throws. It's kind of an unusual circumstance, because what you see going on in college football right now is when something like that happens, a guy loses a starting job, they're gone. So obviously Coach Allen's done a really good job of keeping him there. I don't know the backstory and all those types of things, but the fact that they have a really, really exciting young quarterback who's been a starter and then a veteran stayed around and now is getting his opportunity again. He'd been playing throughout the year too. That's a pretty good situation to be in today's college football.
Hey James, how are you?
Good.
I'm good. Hey,
sometimes I like doing this, and I don't know if you guys think I'm frowning and grumpy, or a lot of times it's the lights.
Cool. Moving on.
But I'm also frowning.
Hey, Indiana's receivers. I think four of their top 5 receivers are all over 6'2". You faced some big wide receivers last weekend. How does Indiana's wide receivers compare to Minnesota, and what can you guys take from having faced those sizable receivers last week?
Yeah, I think the guy that really jumps out to us, and don't get me wrong, they got a number of guys, but the guy that really jumps out to us is the guy that I've already mentioned a couple times. It's got a WAP, an interesting name, from Tampa, Florida. But he's 5'11", 178 pounds. I think he falls more into the category of like Jahan Dotson and KJ. Although the other guys, to your point, have been successful as well. But I think they're probably similar to what they see from our guys in practice every single day. So obviously the experience against Minnesota's wide receivers, who we had a lot of respect for going into the game, thought it was the best wide receiver group that we had seen up to that point this year. That experience and going against our guys in practice, obviously, I think will give us a chance to be successful Saturday.
Hey James, how are you?
Good.
Good. Sean Clifford's first time in the spotlight after a tough loss. Obviously very emotional. PJ Mustipher told us this morning that in the locker room afterward, you made it a point to bring up Sean in front of the team and say, kind of absolve blame in some ways. How have you seen Sean in the last couple of days coming back, kind of resume his normal role, move beyond those emotions? And what has he done based on the body of work you've seen that gives you confidence that he's the kind of kid who can shake this off and keep his eyes forward?
It's a great question. My answer is going to be very similar to what it's been every other one of your guys' questions. I can't really tell yet again because of what I've already said, but I just have a lot of confidence in how Sean is wired. He is going to be driven by this. He was already driven, but he's going to be driven by this even more, by the way he was raised, by the type of high school program he's come from how he's been in our program since he's been here. I think you guys see the passion and the heart that he plays with. I think it's probably one of his strongest characteristics, and how he prepares. So I think he's going to do everything in his power and more to make sure he doesn't feel the way he felt Saturday night, just like I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure I don't feel like I did this Saturday night. So, the thing we won't do, is we're not going to make, I think one of the worst things you can do when things like this happen is you make dramatic changes. You don't make dramatic changes if your process is correct. And I think over the last 3 years, the data would support that our process is pretty darn good. And that's individual decisions with players. We're in a developmental business. We're going to continue to do that. And then that's the same thing, as a team. Now, don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean we stick our head, in a sand pile and not look at the game and our preparation for the game and say, what do we need to do better? What can we get better at? And what subtle modifications or slight adjustments can we make? We're doing that. But Sean, I know, is going to do what he's done all year long, which is working very well for him. But does he maybe watch 15 minutes more? Does he ask 3 more questions? Probably. I think, again, I don't think your process should change, but it's human nature that it's probably going to try to drive a little bit more.
James, you guys seemed like you had success with the tailback running the ball, and I know you're behind the run pass balance. Were you satisfied? It was like 44-29. Do you think you got away from the run a little bit? And also I was curious about just all the special teams penalties, if what can be done there, or if you think that's...
The special teams penalty is an issue. Yeah, that is an issue. The run pass balance, I don't know if you're basing that off of the statistics or if you're basing that off just of your feel of watching the game, because we had some big runs early on. And then after that, we were kind of grinding out. I actually think we had our most success in the second half when we were throwing the ball quickly with tempo. I didn't necessarily feel that way to your point. But we just, we got to be more consistent. We got to be more efficient in everything we do. But I didn't necessarily feel that way. I thought we started out and we made some big runs early on. They had a guy there to make the tackle. In the hole, we made a miss or broke the tackle and took it the distance. And as the game went on, they didn't miss as many of those tackles. So I didn't necessarily see it or feel it that way.
I got one. James, with the running backs, when you look at Journey and the success that he had, what do you remember about his recruitment kind of beyond the track background that obviously impressed you guys?
Yeah, obviously he had the track times that really jump out at you. He had unbelievable production in terms of, I think you guys all know the story of the 700 yards and 10 touchdowns or whatever it was in one game. So, he had the ability. But I think sometimes when you're just so dominant like that at the level of football he was playing in, what would it translate? Because a lot of times he was just getting the ball and just going down the sideline without breaking tackles, without making people miss. But at the end of the day, we had an in-state kid who was a really good kid that wanted to be here and had great times and had great measurements and had unbelievable production. And he's come here and he's been really good. I'm very proud of him. Very proud of him. And he just keeps getting better. And I think you're going to see that continue with him as he gains confidence in games and as he adds kind of a few more tools to his tool belt compared to high school where he could just run past everybody. And I think our coaching staff and specifically Coach Sider's done a good job with that. So I just think you're going to see those backs, all of them, because even Journey, although he's the older vet of the group, he's still fairly young from an experience standpoint, from a playing standpoint. So I just think you're going to see all those guys just continue to get better. Ricky and Journey and Devin and Noah and all of them.
James, how has, maybe as the season progressed, what has changed, if anything, regarding the running back philosophy? For example, we saw a lot more of one running back this past game, and the last two games we saw, your starting running back, get, carries on the first two drives. So what, if anything, has changed there?
Nothing really has changed. We've had some injuries that have changed it, is probably the only thing. But we've said in the past that if a guy was hot, we would stay with him, and that's happened. So we've left guys in there, but really the only difference has been we've had some guys get banged up that we could have played. Noah could have played, but it didn't make sense to play at 90% Noah when we had three other guys at 100%.
Coach, when it comes to the running backs being involved in the receiving game, how can that help in terms of spread the ball around instead of, because KJ and Pat have gotten the majority of the receptions almost, how can the running backs in the receiving game really help spread the ball around on offense?
Yeah, I think the more ways you can get people the ball in their hands, and I think, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I actually think the running backs have probably been more involved in the passing game this year than in the years past. Probably an area we could still get better. But those guys have been good. I mean, obviously we had the big play on Saturday. They got called back on a penalty. That was to the running back that would have left us the ball 2-yard line with a chance to win. So we have plays to be able to put those guys in position to make plays, and then sometimes it's just how the coverage and the read goes, whether it gets to them or not.
Anything else for Coach?
James, when you go back and look at the series where Devin came in around the goal line, obviously we already talked about the red zone, but are there any plays there that you think maybe you guys could have, with hindsight, done differently or gone about differently as opposed to kind of the 3 runs and then the shot that KJ on 4th down?
No, I don't have that series broken down specifically to be able to sit here and tell you and second guess. And to be honest, I don't know if I would do that anyway. Those conversations that I have with the players or with my staff, I wouldn't have them here publicly with you, but no, I don't have anything. I think if you look at our offensive production on Saturday was pretty good. We weren't good in the red zone. The turnovers and our red zone production was the difference. And those two things, I think everybody in the room would admit we've been pretty good at those things all year long. So what I try to do is try not to overreact in small amounts of either reps or when I got 8 games to look at compared to 1. We're not going to overreact. That doesn't mean that we don't study it, and that doesn't mean we don't study hard and try to get better at those things. I'm not saying that, but we've I think coming into this game, we were the only team in the country that was ranked in the top 10 in all three efficiencies, offense, defense, and special teams. And again, specifically to turnovers and red zone, that's the area we've been good. We weren't good there on Saturday.
You expressed quite a bit of confidence in PJ Mustafer's ability to step up last week. Do you feel like he did that? And beyond that, what does it mean to get Antonio Shelton back into the fold this weekend?
Yeah, I think PJ did some good things and took a step. Obviously, we missed Antonio. We're going to be happy to have him back. I actually think we missed Antonio's leadership on the sideline as much as we missed his presence on the field. He's a smart guy. He's a vocal guy. He's a loud guy, and is not afraid to speak his mind on the sideline, like you guys have seen in the press conferences as well. He does a really good job, but we missed that. We really did. So having him back will be good.
Time for two more. Start with you, Frank.
James, you've talked about how proud you are of where Sean Clifford is at this point in his career already as far as being a quarterback. How much do you put on his plate, just maybe in perspective to other schools and what other quarterbacks at the college football level are asked to do? How much is on his plate versus other places you might have been or other places you might have seen?
Yeah, I think a decent amount. The interesting thing is I think sometimes in the spread offense, the perception out there is there's less sophisticated reads. You always heard the knock on the spread guys in the NFL. It's amazing if you look, the NFL is almost dominated by spread quarterbacks now. But what's interesting is I would actually say it's more taxing because on every single play they're involved. Where in pro style offense, there's plays where you're just going to turn around and hand the ball off and maybe follow by the fake. That's about it. But typically in these spread RPO offenses, you are reading on every single play. Whether you're reading a defensive end or outside linebacker, whether to give or whether to pull. I actually think it's more challenging, at the quarterback position. Obviously, it depends on how you build it and how you do it. There's some people that probably are a little bit less sophisticated than others, but being a guy who's part of the West Coast offense, that's what we ran when I was at Maryland. That's what we ran when I was at Vanderbilt. That's what we ran when we first got here, or pro style West Coast offense. That obviously became very popular with Bill Walsh and the details and the complexity of it. I think Sean's doing a really good job, and I think he's got a good amount on his plate. And I think, again, if you look at the entire season overall, pretty darn good. We had a quarterback before him that was pretty good, and you could compare the two. And I think Sean's numbers and production would be favorable.
James, when you have a big game like that and some young receivers drop balls, how do you address that? Is there a balance between pointing out the mistakes that they obviously knew that they made and, tough love or, kill them with kindness? How do you go about approaching that?
Yeah, I think it's a fine line. I don't think there's any doubt about it. You can't avoid it and ignore it like it didn't happen, but it's got to be addressed. But obviously during the game, I don't think you saw me or anybody overreact to those guys. It's just not how we go about our business. I don't understand how that helps you. Now in practice, we can be hard on guys. Meetings, I wouldn't say we're hard, but we're direct and we have tough conversations to kind of work through it. But I think when you remember that most people and most young people are harder on themselves than you'll ever be, that I think that changes how you approach things. So at the end of the day, we got to build their confidence up and we got to build their fundamentals and skills up so they make those plays rather than spend so much time on what they didn't do.
Thank you, Coach.
I do got something. So I want to talk a little bit about, because at the end of the game I got some questions about going for two. I kind of want to talk about that specific situation, but I also kind of want to talk big picture of what I struggle with, and maybe next summer at the barbecue, you guys can fill me in on your perspective, because it's probably not the setting for this right now. But so going for 2 in that situation, we looked at the classic 2-point chart, which said go for it. We used our analytics stuff, which said go for it. We decided to go for it partly because we're on the road, not playing as well as we thought we should be at the time. And if we picked up the 2-point conversion, it increased our chances and put us in a better situation. If we didn't pick it up, we still were going to have to overcome those points at some point. At the end of the day, here's the thing I struggle with. A lot of these decisions are not clear-cut. There's some that are, but there's a lot that are not clear-cut. It's a gut feel. And what I struggle with is when those decisions, and again, I already told you, the 2-point chart said go for it, the analytics stuff said go for it, but then opinions are stated as facts. And I struggle with that. I struggle with things that go on when it comes to discipline, and people know very little of the story but have really strong opinions on how things are supposed to play out. I'll give you another example. The end of the game. We're trying to decide, do we go onside kick? Everybody know what I'm talking about? End of the game. Do you go onside kick there? Or do you kick it deep, hold them, and burn your timeouts? Right? We decided to kick it deep. We decided to do a squib kick. You guys probably saw me come bring them over there because I was hoping with a squib kick we have a chance of maybe pinning them inside the 25 because every yard mattered at that point. And you never know. With one guy deep having to cover the whole field, you kick it on an angle, you may go down and recover it. He may bobble it, which he did bobble it. We stopped them, went 3 and out. I burned the timeouts. That was the right decision. Why? Why was that the right decision?
Because it worked.
Because it worked. Because we stopped them. They went 3 and out. And I burned the timeouts. If they would have picked up 2 first downs and ended the game, I would have been getting my butt ripped in the press conference for why didn't you go onside kick? You're missing my point. My point is sometimes the decisions are clear cut, and I get it. And I make mistakes. A lot of people make mistakes. But when things are gray, and things are stated as facts, I struggle with that. When I see people criticizing decisions on discipline, and I'm not just talking about my program, and you don't have all the facts, I just struggle with things being stated as facts when they're not. They're opinions. And a lot of times it's based on how it plays out. If I went for 2 early in the game and we picked up the 2, it's a great decision. We threw a screen. We had 3 guys. They had 2. If we run inside and score, we get 2. It's a great situation. So I'm not saying I'm always right, but it's easy after the fact to say that was a bad decision when we don't execute. Now at the end of the day, I'll be the first one to admit I'm ultimately responsible for making sure that we execute the decision. So I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm still responsible for all of it, and I'll take it. But I will tell you, that's where my frustration comes from sometimes. And doing this for 24 years, that's the hard part. Once again, you disagree with me, then you're more than welcome to. I'm stating my opinion on how I kind of see it. So I appreciate you guys listening to me and let me vent for a few minutes, but it is on to Indiana. And I'll look forward to not answering any more questions about last week in Minnesota.
Thank you, Coach.